We're thrilled to have Molly Grantham with us tonight. And by the way, I'm Lynn Erdman. I'm the executive director for Carolina Breast Friends. Molly is a two-time Emmy Award-winning journalist who was named Charlatan of the Year in 2020 by Charlotte Magazine. She has also been named TV News Reporter of the Year for both Carolinas. She's one of Charlotte's top 40 under 40 and one of Mecklenburg County's 50 most influential women. She's a leader in social media. She anchors WBTV's 5 o'clock and 5:30 news, and she solo anchors the 11 p.m. show, which, by the way, is #1 in the marketplace. So if you haven't tuned in, you need to do so. She cares deeply about finding a cure for breast cancer because the disease has impacted her family personally. And she's a wonderful friend to Carolina Breast Friends. She also is the local spokesperson for Komen Charlotte. So she shares her time between both of us, and we are grateful for that. Her first book, Small Victories, The Off-Camera Life of an On-Camera Mom, sold out on Amazon in the first week. It's funny, it's accurate, and it's a real-life account of juggling too much and showing imperfections in relatable ways, which we can all appreciate. A perfect lead-in to her second book, The Juggle Is Real, which launched in May of 2020 in the middle of the coronavirus, a time when everyone has been juggling more than ever, and we still are in 2021. So without any further introduction, I will turn it over to Molly, a great friend of Carolina Breast Friends. Molly.
Hi guys. I see half your faces and I understand fully if you don't want to put your camera on, but if you don't mind, and believe me, I do not care about the mess behind you. I do not care what you look like. No one is judging anything. Feel free to put your camera on because I feel like this is such a unique opportunity for us to connect, and we're also separated and have been for so many months. So to get to see people, different people than the same people we always see in the same four walls we always see, I'd love to see your faces. So that's all I'll say about the beginning. To stay on mute, as Leslie had said, that's helpful, but please chat, type in any question you have as we go through this. I am monitoring that as best I can throughout, and nothing's off the table. You can ask anything. I'm kind of an open book. So I just got off air, did the 5 to 6 o'clock. And if you do have your camera on, I might ask some questions where we can raise hands. Again, there's 2 pages here to go through, but at least to get an idea of different things. I was going to say how many people watch the news, but if you didn't, I kind of understand. It's a lot going on right now. It's a lot to take in, but Patty just raised her hand. She watched the news. So I just walked off set and I am sitting in an edit bay. I think the things we've learned through 2020 and going into 2021 about virtual is that we always stare at everybody's backgrounds, right? In like every meeting we're in, we're looking at their pictures and their bookshelves and what they've been reading or whatever. So I'll go ahead and show you my very uninteresting background. I'm in an edit bay, which is, there's 3 of these in the station. This is where we come in to sound things, like track things. That's why that big fluorescent light is there. And I don't know how to, I guess if I do it this way, maybe it's actually better lighting. Is that better? You see that ugly background of the soundproofing walls. So that's where I am right now. And you might hear my emails go off because I am in the middle of my dinner break. I do anchor the 11 o'clock news as well. As Lynn said, thank you, by the way, Lynn, that was a really nice intro. And so as emails coming in, obviously the inauguration is tomorrow. We've had a crazy 2.5 weeks of 2021. We've got our 3 reporters out right now. I approve their scripts every night. So I've got a lot of stuff coming in. So if you hear my emails go off, if anything breaks and happens first and I have to run, I'll tell you all exactly what it is and then I'll hop off. So that's my disclaimer. If I have to bolt early, you'll get the news first. And in the intro, I feel like in the interest of full disclosure, I should clarify, Lynn, I was one of the top 40 under 40. I am now 43. So there's no more, I'm no longer a 40 under 40. And I felt a little dishonest hearing you say that, as lovely as it was to hear you say that. So I'll go ahead and clarify that. But I am here really honored to talk tonight because I do feel like we're so disconnected and it's sort of an absurd world in a lot of different ways. And there's so many divisions between people, not just in what you see on the news, but in just relating and social interaction. It's impacting adults. It's also impacting kids, which, you know, I have 3 kids and 2 are of age to be able to talk to me. And I can tell how difficult it is to have cut back on so much of the social interaction, finding these new ways to socialize. So it's awesome. And I'm honored to be here tonight, to be the first speaker for 2021. And it was originally touted as a book club, which is great. I love reading from the book and I love talking about the Juggle Is Real. It was a huge passion project to put out this past May, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. But I really like that it's turned into sort of a speaker series, and that Carolina Breast Friends is kicking off this 2021 speaker series in this way for all the reasons I just said. We can talk about the book. I hope to read some excerpts from the book. If you don't have the book, it's completely fine. You'll still hopefully appreciate the next hour, and you can still ask anything you want. But it does feel like we need to connect, right? And that there's much negativity out there, that to have this way to socialize, it's how I put it on my Facebook page about if people wanted to sign up, it's just a really great opportunity, not just about a book, but about the conversation. But to have the conversation, I do need you guys to ask questions, and feel free to, again, ask anything. In thinking about some of the things we juggle, and here is the book, The Juggle Is Real. In thinking about some of the things we juggle, I'm going to ask you guys later on, if you want to share some of the things that you juggle, because we're all juggling so much, and we're all juggling so much more now, I would almost bet, than we were before. Although I say before, like before COVID and after COVID. So I feel like we're juggling more now. Many people I talk to, many friends, all ages, different perspectives, but they're all different things. So maybe you worked before and that was a lot going on, but now your work is completely different. That might make life easier in some ways. It might make it more difficult. Carolina Breast Friends, as an example, right? How to raise money, how to support breast cancer survivors, how to help the thrivers, how to be there with the warriors. How do you do that when you can't be around people, especially those who are immune compromised? So it's all, there's my email. So there's, I don't know if you guys could hear that. It's all different in this world, and that makes the juggle in many ways more difficult, I have found, at least personally, because there's no structure for it. I don't know how to work from home, which I had to do in the spring because I was pregnant and high risk at the time. And so I couldn't be around people. I mean, how do you anchor the news from home? We build a home studio. Well, that's a completely different juggle. You guys, if you were watching at 5:30, could literally see someone mowing the lawn outside my window one day, or the doorbell rang one time. At the time we had a dog, he barked all the time. He barked through every single show, and no matter what we did with him, you know? So it was just like, there's different juggles of everything, and some are funny, but some are really hard. So I am going to ask you guys to put in later, just be thinking about now what some of your juggles are. What is one thing, I'll just throw this out here as a guess, will you guess, whether what you know about me or not, basically the intro Lynn said, but what is the one thing you would think is the hardest thing I have to juggle right now? And I'm going to ask you, if you want to unmute yourself and shout this out, I am happy to answer it that way rather than chat for this. Just shout it out. Anne, go ahead, your hand's up.
Time for yourself, Molly.
Yeah, I didn't think about that one. Yes, that's non-existent. But
About homeschooling kids.
who just said that?
Me,
Lynn.
Lynn.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, the news is really difficult right now. No matter on any, whether it's vaccine, COVID, politics, no matter what you're talking about, the news is really difficult. The hate is really strong in social media. That's part of my job to handle every day, day in, day out, the negativity from that. So that's really a huge thing. Have a 6-month-old. He's awesome. He's a lot, obviously. And you add all that together in the working 2 to midnight as well. And the most difficult thing, day in, day out, no questions asked, is homeschool. And I don't know how many of you are parents or grandparents, and maybe you're going through the same thing. I would welcome you to share any stories you have, but I do have a picture here. Let me just show you, like, any given day. If you follow on Facebook, you might know I've made up a name for the hallway next to our garage where we have 2 desks. It's a really nice space. We're very blessed and lucky to have the space, but we've called it Mermaid Academy because I needed to make it sound fun. because a hallway next to a garage for school and a computer is not fun. Here is any given day, generally speaking. That's my son Hutch, he's 6, he's in kindergarten, and my daughter Parker with her back to me, her desk. Obviously neither of them are at their desks, but she's on the floor.
Molly, we can't see your screen.
Oh no, oh no, 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 no. Let me see if I get back. Oh, I can do it. I can do it. I know how to share screen because Leslie taught me last night. Wait, hold on. Screen, share. Bam, do you see it? Okay. Can you guys see? That's my homeschool. That is kindergarten and 4th grade in Mermaid Academy. That is not staged. That is not a joke. That is any given day. It was clearly before Christmas when I took that because of the tree in the back. And I actually think that was probably a pretty good day, because if I was feeling fun enough to take a photo, then that was something, that's a good thing. It's hard. It's hard. Here's another given day. This is, I think, Hutch, the 6-year-old, explaining to me why he wasn't going to do whatever it was. Maybe it was show and tell. I mean, bless these teachers, right? A kindergarten teacher trying to do it on a computer, show and tell, or whatever they were trying to do, learn to read. This is the 4th grader who wants to avoid her fractions. So she's convincing him that he should get into school. And he says, no, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Do you guys have, I really do want to, I'm learning how to share these screens, sorry. I really do want to hear any of your stories if you have them, and there might be some in chat.
There's some in chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Oh, you guys are putting the answers in there. Okay. So I'm looking at that one. My 4th grader from Michelle is in school 5 days a week, but dealing with my 17-year-old being responsible for his schoolwork at home alone 3 days a week is a joke. Yeah, it's a joke. I mean, I get it. I completely feel for the safety issue of teachers, but it's really hard. I brought all that up to say that juggling something we were not used to juggling before homeschool. That's a great example of something that none of us were ever expecting. And I am going to share this one story because I think you'll appreciate how there are just no boundaries anymore. So this was homeschool last week. I am in news. Obviously, news is 24 hours a day, and especially these past many months, in particular these past few weeks, it is not a 2 to midnight job. That's when I come into the station, but there's news is happening all the time. And especially as we plan the shows and there's different discussions going on, I need to be a part of those. So it becomes all the time. So this was at 10 a.m. and I'm teaching the kids. Hutch is in gym class, but he's playing a ukulele. I don't know why. The other circle is Parker doing handstands. Okay. I mean, I feel like I'm a good mom. I feel like I have structure. They won't listen. Like, it's just not working, right? Or maybe she had a brain break or something. It wasn't completely belligerent, but I had to, what you're seeing is my Microsoft Teams call, because we were talking about the vaccination. And we have a lot of research from consulting companies. It's really fascinating on what people say, a really diverse group of age and race, and both men and women, and what socioeconomic differences on what people think about the vaccine and what kind of stories they want to know. And is it that, they just want all the facts of what's in it, or do they just want to know where to go get it and they believe that it's going to help them? And so we have this really important discussion to go through our newsroom, because the stories that we give as a conduit to the community about how to get the vaccine, why you should get the vaccine, what you think about the vaccine, listening to your concerns about the vaccine is obviously really, really important. It's not your typical news. And so we all have to be on this call at 10 a.m. Well, here I am helping with this call, but behind me is ukulele and gym class supposedly and handstands. So there are just no boundaries. There are just no boundaries. And I find that is the hardest thing now, that even before I wrote this book, I thought the juggle was real then. I might argue the juggle is more real now for all of us. They're juggling different things, but I think we can find similarities in all of it. So if you have any stories about homeschool, or stories you hear, I know a lot of people are trying to help their neighbors and things, especially ones with young kids. Middle school and high school is a little more self-sufficient. I would love to hear them, if nothing else, for we're all in this together and the comfort of it. And if you know of anybody that needs to hear that it's difficult, tell them. Hardest thing, you got news, you have hate, you've got a baby, you've got a job 2 to midnight, and the hardest thing, hands down, is homeschool. So it's, you know, pray for the teachers, pray for the I just went and talked. I just said brilliant things, you guys, and I'd muted myself. So sorry about that. I was saying, I was talking about the homeschool, but if you have any stories you want to share, or if you're helping anybody, I know a lot of neighbors are even trying to help distance themselves with people who especially have young kids in school, because middle and high school is more self-sufficient. But I would be happy to hear those stories, because I feel like we are all in this together, and there's a lot of camaraderie and strength in knowing that you're not alone, for grandparents, for parents, and for people that miss and wish they could help and they can't do it. But if you do have anybody you know that's struggling with homeschool, feel free to tell them they are not alone, and that I've got news with a lot of intense headlines and important things to relay. And we have a lot of hate on social media I'm fielding, and I have a baby and a job 2 to midnight, and hands down of all those things, the most difficult thing is homeschool. So I see some parents on the call possibly nodding. It's just a really tough thing. Pray for the parents and pray for the teachers that they can all get back into school and teach their kids, I think, in ways that might be more beneficial to them. If you guys, yeah.
Molly, one of the things we hear a lot from survivors, and I know there's some breast cancer survivors on the phone, is loneliness, because of the isolation from COVID. You know, can't really gather with friends like they used to, not comfortable going different places. And that's kind of a juggle in your life, something that has changed so dramatically this past year.
It has changed so dramatically. Do you guys feel that? The loneliness, the isolation? You can say anything on this call. There's no judgment. All I ever ask for is to have honesty and authenticity. Yes, it is. It's a lot, Lynn. There's a lot of loneliness and a lot of isolation. I feel very lucky that I have 3 kids that keep me active, so I don't feel isolated, and that I'm not talking to people. I'm talking to people, sometimes yelling all the time, but and I get to come into work and see the same few people. We've really limited how many people can come in, but even events like this, I mean, what you guys are doing and connecting in different ways and creative ways is so important. I mean, I invite all of you to go get a glass of wine and sit around and enjoy it, and pretend it's a night out with friends, because it's just hard to have this in this day and age. You know, it really is. And you have to hope that there's hope, but there's a lot of loneliness right now, and we'll be out of it at some point. I always do you hear a lot of people say when we get back to normal, or what the new normal is? I call it the new next, because I don't know what exactly it'll look like. None of us really do, but there might be some things that the world has adjusted to now that stay in place. Maybe there will be more work from home. Maybe Carolina Breast Friends can do a lot of things more virtually. Maybe we'll still be wearing masks, who knows? But hopefully we can still put kids back in school. We can still go out and see our friends. We can feel fine at roaming free, and not have to feel such fear at getting sick or touching things. But the loneliness is a huge thing. And I say that not just personally, but from being in a newsroom, and we have phone calls and emails and Facebook messages and Twitter and Instagram. I mean, we are in touch with the community, 26 counties watch WBTV. And so we hear from people in all areas. When I say Charlotte area, it's, a ton of people. It's not just a metropolitan Charlotte group. And the theme is, right now at least, frustration and loneliness, because people want to get out, and fatigue. We're just tired of sort of the world. That's sort of the reflection. That is part of the juggle. That's part of what everyone's juggling. And I'm glad you chimed in, Lynn. Anyone that has any questions, feel free to put them in chat or chime in as we go through. It's a really open hour that I just want us to talk about things you guys want to talk to.
Molly,
yes.
Will you tell us about when your family all had COVID? I know we talked about that last night, and you wanted me to mention that to you, because it must have been a very stressful time.
I can. Do you guys want me to explain the COVID story? The COVID story? Yes, I can. So I'm trying to think about it, actually. Let me actually ask any of you, have any of you had COVID? If you raise your hand, or no? You have, Michelle, I see your hand raised and your camera's on to see that. North Carolina, well, I don't want to say that statistic wrong. I'm looking through all the screens to see, I don't see any other hands raised. There's 400,000 people that have died as of today. In America, we've hit that new milestone. So it's certainly impacting many people. And our family was very lucky. We were unlucky in that we all got it, and we all got it when my son was very, very young. But I need to emphasize on repeat, we are so lucky, we're all okay. And it ended up being a story that was picked up actually around the world. I was getting requests from England and crazy news agencies all over to ask about it once it was public. But it was a public thing. And so I think it frightened a lot of people. And I appreciated the concern because we had Hobie. Hobie is my now 6-month-old, and he was 10 days old at the time. So we ended up getting COVID. We're not exactly sure how. I think when you talk to people that get COVID, they don't always know exactly how they got it. And the doctors emphasized to us, it doesn't really matter where you got it because so many people are going to get it. And this was back in July. They said that to us. And remember our mindsets back then, we kind of thought like, oh, we'll be fine by October. We'll definitely be fine by Christmas. And here we are. So, and we're just not as a world, and certainly as a country. So in July, we knew it was a big deal, and I could go into the hospital to have my baby, and my husband could come, but we knew we could have no visitors. And my in-laws, Wes's parents, were coming in from Kentucky to watch the other two, Parker and Hutch. They both got tested in Kentucky before they came, so we knew it was a serious thing. They both got tested. They were both negative. We went into the hospital on a Tuesday, and they test you when you go in. So we checked in at 5 a.m. or whatever, and they tested me and I was negative. So they assume your husband's negative. So we all basically think we were negative. Had the baby Tuesday night. Wes and I went home Thursday, and by Friday, my mother-in-law didn't feel well. They immediately left back to Kentucky. And by Friday night, Parker, the 9-year-old, that night, remember the baby's now 3 days old, was absolutely the sickest I've ever seen her. She came in the middle of the night and she woke us up, and she was just sweating and matted and like a huge fever. And she laid down on the carpet and was just there all night long. So we took care of her, and then I'd go get the baby because he was only, 2 or 3 hours a night before he needed food. And so just went back and forth, and she was fine 24 hours later. And that's the thing pediatricians say about kids that get COVID. It can be very, very scary, but then they're fine. And then like 2 or 3 days later, they want to play with their friends and they want to run around outside, and you think that they're fine because they have no symptoms, and they are still, the incubation period of COVID is so difficult that it can still spread. It's just that she feels fine. And so we obviously kept her in. We had gotten her a test actually that Saturday morning. I guess the fever was Friday night, and Saturday I had the first pediatrician appointment for Hobie anyway. That's how it worked, because you can't have extra doctors weren't even in the hospital because of COVID. So we sent up this pediatrician appointment for Saturday morning. I put the other 2 kids in the car and took Hobie in and asked them to send a nurse out to do like a, in through the car window, a test of them. And that came back a few days later confirming that, yes, what Parker had was COVID. But by that point, we were already assuming she had it. And by that point, my husband didn't have any smell or taste. Hutch had a small low-grade fever, sort of like a, sinus infection. And we had to take Hobie to go get tested because we realized with 3 of them having it, and we had to be worried about him. And you know who I wasn't thinking about in all of this? Ladies, moms, women, who are you not thinking about in all of this, right? And I was tired, but I had just had a baby. You're postpartum, your body aches, you have a pounding headache, you're up every 3 hours. I'm trying to pump and breastfeed. And it was like hard for me to kind of walk up the steps, and I'm a pretty active person. I didn't even think about it because if you have babies, like your entire body's messed up. You're not worried about COVID. The pains are pain from postpartum. And it was a solid, I guess, 9 or 10 days after he'd been born. So 6 or 7 days after this whole started. that I knew we had to get a test. And at that time, it was very, very hard to find tests. You had to make appointments and I couldn't get callbacks. And I was calling the health department. I mean, it was just sort of like in the middle of everything else. I was trying to do this, but we found a drive-through clinic on Freedom Drive at the Michael Jordan Healthcare Clinic. And I showed up, it opened at 8. I was there at 7:30 and was like the 30th car in line already. And it was just me. And I think it was just me because I said, I need to go get tested. So Wes had all the other kids and I thought I'd like run in and get tested and come back. And the doctor finally got up there and she listened to my breathing and did all the testing. And the system was really unbelievable to watch these healthcare workers. It was just remarkable, the organization they had, and they were all covered, you know, in their like hazmat suits or whatever. And they came to my window and then she was talking and I was telling her this story and, oh, we have a baby and, oh, my daughter has it and, oh, my son doesn't. And, oh, yeah, I can't really breathe, but it's fine. I just had a baby. And I could tell by watching her, because that's what my job is, to watch people and study them and ask questions. I could tell as I was saying the story out loud to her, I sounded like a crazy woman for not acknowledging what was going on in my own self. And she said, okay, well, I'd like to, listen to your chest and have the stethoscope. And then she said, I'm actually going to bring you inside to the clinic. Nobody was getting out of cars and going into the clinic. And I need to do some chest x-rays. It was a phenomenal clinic. They had it all set up in there. So I did. And then she said, we'll go back, sit in the car. And she came back 10 minutes later and said, and I was like on the phone with a friend saying, oh, I've just got to run through this clinic thing. And then I'm gonna be back and I'm going to feed Hobie. And I got to find, like trying to figure out how to keep the kids active for the day inside the house and who could call them or whatever, something, right? You just have nothing to do when you're quarantined. And she came back and she said, well, the rapid test is positive and you have pneumonia. There's nodules on your lungs. So, and I was like, okay, well, Shelly, I'm going to get off the phone and we'll figure it out. And so she said to bring the baby, and Wes brought all the kids, and we tested Hobie. And at the time he was the youngest presumptively positive case in Mecklenburg County. It didn't come back positive, but they said at 10 days old, we don't even know what we're looking for. There's just not enough data with this virus. So there are some babies that have gotten it. There was one actually in Levine at the time who was a baby on an incubator because of COVID. And those stories don't really get out too much because unless the families want to talk about it, they're sort of hard to tell. And there's HIPAA laws for the hospitals not to tell you. But Hobie at the time was presumptively positive. And they said, we don't really know what to tell you to look for, but when you go home with him, it's obviously a lung thing. And we ask you just watch him breathe. So you have pneumonia and you have COVID and your other family members are recovering from COVID on a slightly different timeline of you. So they should stay away from you, parent them through walls and watch the baby breathe. And we're so sorry. We know this is a horrible diagnosis of what to tell you, but we don't really know what else to tell you. Oh, and here's a really strong antibiotic to go for your pneumonia, but you're going to have to stop breastfeeding cold turkey. Okay, because it's so strong, right? I can't get Hobie to have what's in my body if that medicine's so strong. I don't know if any of you ever breastfed. I don't know if any of you ever breastfed and then stopped cold turkey. But I'm going to tell you right now. Worst, it's of all the things, the worst was the pain. And 48 hours later, the pain was over. But when you just stop and your body, all my milk had finally come in and the baby was ready and I had to stop. So I went home and I stopped breastfeeding and I started the medicine and I got an allergic reaction to it and got hives all over my body, top to bottom. There's a picture I'll never show publicly because if you Google my name 10 years from now, that's all you'd see. It's so unnerving, like hives everywhere, really engorged breasts. I can say that to Carolina Breast Friends, a baby that has COVID possibly, so I have to watch him breathe, and the rest of the family were supposed to be quarantining. And that was our July. And we got through it and we're all okay. But it was a remarkable, I think, wake-up call. I had talked about COVID every single night in the news since March. I understood the complications. I knew how dangerous it was. I knew the debate between it and how it became a very political conversation. And I still was stunned at just how fast you could get it, how quickly it could spread. You don't even need to know where you got it from. We assume my mother-in-law got it on the way down as they stopped at a couple gas stations, maybe going in to use the restroom. Maybe Wes got it at the hospital. Those are exposure points hospitals. When he went to the cafeteria once, it was just a huge wake-up call. And that kids can get it. This is when they were deciding whether to go back to school. I think that's partly why the story spread, because our 9-year-old was the one to give it to us first. I'm going to share my screen again. And I had a couple of pictures ready to show you guys to see. That was, well, hold on. I don't know. Can you see that? That was the picture that I put out in a Facebook post once we were all okay. And I wrote what I wrote. It was thousands of words. I have a tendency to write long. It was a Facebook post that ended up traveling because I wrote it as a lessons learned. Here are the symptoms. We all had different symptoms in our family. Our child gave it to us first. We don't know where she got it. Our baby was presumptively positive. Yes, you can have it if you're a woman, you know, and you can't breastfeed with it. I mean, there's just like all these different lessons in there. And mostly the post, I don't know if you ever read it, but the post was, I wrote it to say, this isn't, you can have a political opinion as to how the state and country should handle COVID, but the virus itself isn't a political thing. The virus itself is real and it's not fake. And I will say, and I'm proud of this, that after that, months later, I would have people stop me, and a lot of people would stop me who were in their 20s saying, I read your post, but really my parents read your post and they suddenly took it more seriously. So thank you, because you might have saved their lives. And I thought that always made me feel when something like that would happen really remarkable. This picture was at the Michael Jordan drive-through clinic. And I'm going to tell you guys, there's no more powerful feeling, I think, than being in my car, knowing I now have COVID and pneumonia, and I'm looking out at my 9-year-old daughter trying to entertain my 10-day-old so the nurse practitioner can take a nasal swab and test him for the virus. You know, that's a pretty powerful image, because I wasn't at that point. We didn't know if he had it, if I was allowed to be around him anymore. And so my 9-year-old was the mini mommy, came with Wes to bring him there to get him tested. And she was with him until we realized that at that point he was presumptively positive and I was going to have to be around him. And then this picture, if you ever wanted to be on the front page of the Observer, that's not how you envision yourself, right? I was like, oh, I've done a lot of great things in Charlotte and changed state laws, and that doesn't get any press, but here we are with my forehead and 2 days of no shower and holding my precious baby boy. So I always think that those are sort of, I look back at that and it's almost like it's almost like, ladies, like it didn't happen. You know, like, I mean, I know it happened, but I can't remember it because I went through it step by step. I mean, I just went through it like one thing at a time. It was minute by minute. I watched him breathe. I didn't even know what I was looking for when I watched him breathe. They said to make sure that it was, I watched his, what did they say? That if I watched his rib cage, I might say this opposite, but stick with me in the concept. The doctors told me, I said, well, okay, great. So I'm going to go watch him breathe. What do I need to watch for? And they said, a baby's rib cage will normally go up and down. If it goes side to side, go to the ER. Or they said it normally goes side to side, and if it goes up and up, you know, go to the ER. But the point was, that's all we knew. I mean, that's how new this virus is for our whole world. There's not a lot of answers for it. And we certainly have more now than we did 6 months ago. But before, 6 months ago, we didn't have anything before that. So that was the story of COVID. And I think there were a lot of lessons learned. Leslie, did that help? Express that? I'm trying to see if there's, can you see, let me see if I have this one other picture too, which probably isn't, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my computer down here. Well, Molly, come on, Zoom. I'm sorry. Okay, there we are. I have this thing too. This was kind of funny. I just show this to be funny. CNN called and I was live on CNN with the pneumonia and the COVID and the baby and the kids, because I thought this is a great outlet to get the lesson learned out there, right? And CBS News called, we did stuff with that. And finally it got to a point I was like, I mean, the message is out. I don't need to be doing the news anymore. So we stopped. But there was a moment in all of it that, again, you don't expect you're going to be on CNN for that. So that is kind of the COVID story. I do want to talk about juggling though as well, and the book, and tell me when we hit too long of a time, okay? And I've got a couple excerpts ready to read. Are you guys good?
Yes, we're great. Keep going.
Okay. So the Juggle Is Real, we know now why we've called it the Juggle Is Real, but I will say in the beginning, I never mentioned why I called it the Juggle Is Real. I don't even bring up the title until, and I didn't realize this until it was published, funny enough. I didn't bring it up. I didn't realize, I didn't explain the title until page 209. So if you happen to have the book, you're welcome to read along, but I am going to read part of an excerpt to sort of explain like the mindset of, I always say women, but men juggle too, of just, I just relate more to women and the multitasking ability that we have of juggling. And I am going to read this. Okay, so what page am I on? Did I say 209? I am on 209, and I have some pictures I might try and share then as I go through. Okay, story hour. There is no way to accurately describe the balls a parent keeps up in the air when they have a career and raise kids. Many of you understand. It's a constant rotation of trying to catch one ball, quickly deal with whatever that ball is, then tossing it back up so you have a hand free to catch whatever ball is heading down next. Some days you drop a few. That's okay. You learn to accept. You have to, because the reality is you can't do it all. You can try, but you'll never be able to hold all the balls at once. So you learn, you adjust, you switch back and forth. You realize one day might be 95% filled with juggling balls that deal with family and life and only 5% job. And the next day filled 90% with balls about your work and only 10% with the rest of life. So you pick one ball in given moments, and the next day or week, another one gets your attention. And through all this, you keep going. You keep going. You keep juggling and catching and tossing back up to focus on the next thing coming. You do this because that is the only way to keep the entire act in motion. Every once in a while, you get caught up in a moment and feel compelled to sign up and add in a new temporary ball. I did that tonight. Parker's Drama Club needed a dinner time taco bar for 75 kids. It was the exact same time as my dinner break from work, and baby, that was all me. I signed up last week excitedly. I was going to do a mom activity. I then called in the order. I planned the pickup down to a 5-minute window, anchored a few shows, rushed to the restaurant, packed up my car with pounds of black beans and hot queso and chafing dishes, and arrived at the school, TV, makeup, and all. I think I scared half the kids. A little background, the K through 5th graders I fed tonight are putting on The Lion King this weekend. Parker auditioned back in the fall and landed the part of young Nala. There's a large cast, and the rehearsals were way more involved than you might assume for an elementary school performance. A local production company partners with her school and comes in for 8 months practicing the blocking, dancing, singing, and acting with the kids. Anyway, the next 3 nights of final rehearsals are starting off on the right foot. The director wanted her 75 student thespians to have full stomachs. In my eagerness to be the parent in charge of the taco bar, I never thought how I'd be scooping out beans on a paper plate as the news spun on, smack in the middle of my workday. So there I was, asking elementary school kids if they wanted pinto or black, while A, counting every long second they took to decide, and B, simultaneously wondering when the calls I'd made at the police department about 3 dangerous armed robberies would be returned. We were hoping to get surveillance video to show at 11 p.m. and ask officers if the robberies were connected. I'd mapped them, and they were within 2 miles and 3 hours of each other, so it seemed a natural question despite no officer being willing, at least so far, to address the answer. But even if they called back now, I couldn't pick up. That's what I kept thinking. I had queso on my forearms, bits of rice stuck to my cheeks, and both hands were in plastic gloves, slopping out food on paper plates. Fast forward an hour, and I'm washing black bean sauce out of my fingernails while reviewing news scripts. I'm still waiting for calls back from police. I think I should text them too, and feel successful while mentally jumbled. The juggling balls are still in rotation. See you guys in 90 minutes on the news. If you see Pico on my dress, give me a pass.
That's hilarious.
I'm going to show you a picture. There is, can you see that? Yeah, so that is how all of us are, right? You're doing something, maybe not all of us, maybe I need your lessons if you don't do this, but you're doing something, but your mind is somewhere else. And I'm sitting there scooping out the beans, asking these 7-year-olds what they want on their taco. And the whole time I'm worried about armed robberies and callbacks from police. And then I get back to work and I do the news, and inevitably, I didn't put this in the book, but inevitably, there's like 3 emails from someone saying, you have a stain on your dress. Yep, thank you. Got it. Know it. Thank you. And just because she's cute, there was Parker. This was when I wrote this, is probably 2 years ago. It was my little young Nala. But I think that lesson on juggling, I've always liked to juggle. I hate the word balance. Because, raise your hand if your life and then a career are 50-50. Right? No, balance to me. Is it? Janet, your hand's raised? I need your lessons if it's 50-50 and you have those boundaries, because I don't have them. How do you do that? I'm putting you on the spot.
That's okay. It's juggle, as you said, but I do it.
50-50. That's amazing. It really is. And I say that in awe. It's very hard for a lot of people to keep it equal. The way that I wrote that is sort of how I look at it, is that one day might be 95% family and kids and 5% work. And the other day might be 90% work and 10% kids and family. And you just have to keep it going. And it becomes, especially with COVID, as we talked about in the beginning, so few boundaries. It's very hard to have boundaries if you get calls at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., or your kids are on your call with you in the morning, or you're teaching kids and then you're suddenly talking to the teacher. We'd never be talking to the teacher at 11 a.m. Otherwise, it would be some sort of formal setup conference or a text or an email at a different time. So I want to go through, and I said I was going to ask you guys what you're juggling. I think a lot of people juggle, elderly parents or your own illness, trying to care for others. And go ahead and put in here, if you don't mind, what you're juggling in the chat to everyone, if you don't mind people seeing it. Because a lot of people juggle, as Lynn said, isolation right now and loneliness, social differences, a career or homeschool, or family, trying to miss that, illnesses. I think the reason I'm going to ask you what you're juggling, because I have another follow-up question to that. So if you feel comfortable throwing in there what you are juggling. And if no one wants to contribute what they're juggling, that's okay too. Wow. 2 surgeries and working behind the scenes in healthcare, Elena. Thank you for thank you. And Michelle, being able to work remotely is a great asset, but also makes defining those boundaries more difficult. Could not agree more, Michelle. Charlene, I juggle my health as I live with metastatic breast cancer, feeding and cooking and shopping for my 4 adult family. Time for me, biggest one we all drop, biggest ball we drop. As you all put those in there, the next question I had, and I love hearing this, I guess we could put it in chat, or I guess we could talk out loud, because there's 40 some people in this call. Let's put it in chat and we can always contribute verbally and put ourselves off mute if we want to. Patty, juggling work and isolation from family and friends and starting a new job during COVID. So learning a new job remotely, or a new job when you're not probably with the whole team, caring for the elderly. The next question I had is, what balls are you letting drop? If we all juggle different balls, are there any balls? And if so, what are they? What are balls that you let drop? I love dropping my personal appearance, dropping housekeeping. It's good. Dropping health and exercise and physical activity. You guys heard the joke, have you gained the COVID-19? My exercise. It's not good to be dropping our exercise and physical activity, but I certainly have. I think that's a really common ball that people end up dropping. I left my career to go on disability. The best decision of the decade, with an exclamation point, Charlene. It's certainly dropping one ball, right? When you don't have the career to have to try and juggle into it if you're used to it. But there's a lot of other things, because Charlene, you said you're also juggling, keeping that house being run. It's a lot. I think when we talk about candidly, and I found this with a lot of different groups, and you guys are certainly this, but when you're real and you talk about it. I mean, Carolina Breast Friends, that's why I love your networking with people, because you're always very honest, and it's networking with people and sort of sharing the love, but being real about what you need. If you need wigs, if you need help, if you need friends, if you need conversation. And those things are really important. And I think I've found, especially in a newsroom where people call and write all the time and being in touch with the community, people want people to be real. You know, how are you doing today? If you're like, great. How are you doing today? I'm great. How are things going? They're fine. I mean, some days aren't fine, and some days we are, and oftentimes we can be. So it's talking about it to get through to that other side where things can feel more hopeful. Do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna keep on going if you don't have questions. Good.
Well, yeah, I do have a question. This is Donna. My question for you, Molly, is do you find that there are, now, you know how couples can have political problems or not, but this is a new thing. People can disagree on how they should be sequestering or, you know, sheltering and such. Like my boyfriend Dennis, extreme. So I have been extreme too, and it's been the hardest thing. We've never disagreed on a thing except for this. 15 years we've been together, and this is the hardest, the most difficult, because it's like living under house arrest for the past 10 months. It's been crazy. So do you find that?
Is he around you right now?
He's in the other room, but you know, he probably hears. He can probably hear. He knows how I feel
give
about
you
it.
advice. I thought we should find out if he's listening. I think that's really honest to say, Donna. I think that's great. Yes, in a newsroom, I hear all kinds of things, right? Extreme views on every side. So have I heard from people and families and partners absolutely differing on how to handle COVID, who can come in your home, how often you can go out? Yes. I mean, I'm not a therapist.
Okay, go potty.
I don't know the answer to that, but did someone just say go potty? Are you talking to your child or dog? I don't have to go potty. So if you're talking to me, I'm totally good. I think that I will tell you, you're not alone. I will tell you people have those complications, and I would just suggest talking about it, or if anyone else has different advice on it. You know, my husband and I are kind of on the same page with that, and I have to come into work. We tried the home studio and it doesn't work, and now I have to come in. I also feel like, at least in the beginning, there was a bigger thought. We're very, very, very careful, but we might have had antibodies. So it's a little bit different. I think the fears, you haven't had it, very real for a lot of people, and for good reason. Does anyone else have advice on how? I can tell you're not alone. I can tell you a lot of people write in and say, I don't know how to do this. I don't know this. I mean, there's therapy, actually, counselors and psychologists and therapists are doing booming business right now.
Mm.
That's a whole news headline. They really are. And actually, and I'm saying this as a fact, as a headline, not as a personal opinion necessarily, but a lot of anti-anxiety drugs are shooting through the roof as far as people signing. There's just too much, right? Like headlines and politics and fear and just anxiousness over a lot of things. And so you are not alone. A lot of people are having disagreements on how to handle things.
Thank you. I can't wait for the vaccine. As soon as they open it up to, you know, the rest of us, I'll be first in line.
I know. You guys want me to tell you something really interesting that I found in that big research project I mentioned that I showed you through homeschool? I was on the iPad and the kids were doing whatever they were doing, but I was on that iPad because we were going through huge research on vaccine and what people think. I write a column for Charlotte Parent, and I actually just put this in it. And it was posted last night. So it's public that I said this, but it hasn't been really widespread. What that research showed, and I am boiling this down to a very 30,000 foot view, but what we took out of it, what I certainly took out of it, was they had all these details on why, but the overarching thing was that women question whether they should get the vaccine much more than men. Like, women want to know what's in it, how's it going to affect me, what if I wanted to have a baby, will I be able to breastfeed with it, how's it going to impact my body? And women, I mean, look, let's face it, and I said this on that very corporate call, which was not appreciated, but I was like, well, women are more thoughtful. And women, we ask more questions, generally speaking, right? And it wasn't a slam on men. It's just more like, okay, well, that's great. And I'm not saying I won't get it, but I need to know more before I do. That's sort of where the research showed women were. And again, it was different ages, different socioeconomic groups, and different races. It was a huge diverse slice. And overarchingly, women thought that, and men thought like, oh, cool, it works, gimme. I'll take it. Like, and I don't know if it's 70 or 80% of the population need to have it to have us all have herd immunity. So it's important for both men and women to get it. But I did think it was interesting when you said, I'm excited for the vaccine, Donna, that there's a true division out there, a lot of questions, and women of color are much more reluctant to want to get it because of history, and very understandable. There's a lot of questions that are coming out about just how government has treated their bodies in the past. So, and that's all based on research. That's not a personal opinion. So that was kind of the vaccine thing. I'm going to keep on going. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay, I'll keep on going. But you can ask anything. And I'm going to give you my email and all that stuff at the end too. So you can always, if it's not a public question, you can always privately email me, and I'm great with that. I did want to read this at the end of the book too. I had a couple excerpts pulled. I said this, or I guess maybe Lynn, you said this. It came out in May of 2020, okay? Right when COVID hit. I sent it to the publisher in March, right when COVID was beginning. Who, when you're writing like a serial memoir, and I don't know if you've read the other book, Small Victories, and this is a sequel to that, but it's a month-by-month account of raising kids and working and wanting my career and also wanting my babies, but how do you have all of this together, right? Hopefully fun and relatable and funny, but it's like month by month. So when I sent this to the publisher in March, how were you ever to know what the next 2, 3, 4, 10 months were going to hold? It's like you're writing about relatively normal life that's funny and real and authentic, but like you're not going to know that suddenly the world shuts down. I'm working from home. I'm pregnant. I mean, this ended, and I don't want to tell you exactly where it ended, but it ended where, Hobie wasn't born yet, right? So this was like, how much could happen in our lives in the last 10 months? How much? So my editor, there's a local woman named Betsy Thorpe, if any of you ever want to write a book, she's excellent. I'd sent it to her, and we got into a final place where I could send it to the publisher. And I was doing this on really fast pace. To have something finally written by March and get it out by May is really fast for books. It was self-published, but it was my mission to get it out by Mother's Day. So in doing that, she said, I really think the world is kind of changing. We don't really know what's going to happen. I don't even think March Madness had been canceled yet. It was early on in COVID. And she said, you might just want to add an afterword. Right? Best advice ever. Because if this is a slice of a time capsule, it really shows that we didn't know what was to come. And it reminds me that I had no idea what was to come. So I want to read you, and you can read the book still and not be thrown if you already have heard the afterwards. So hopefully afterwards, I hope you get the book and I hope you read it and not feel discouraged that you've already heard the afterword. Okay. Where was I going to start though? Okay. None of us, this is page 320, if you're reading along. None of us know what's next, which leads to where our world is as I write this. You say this too, listen to where we were just like 10 months ago, which leads to where our world is as I write this. We're stifled by a surprise pandemic. Nearly every country in the world is being impacted by a respiratory illness that has no vaccine or preventative antiviral drugs. Everyday life started changing for Americans a few weeks ago. Weeks before that, I had been reporting about the coronavirus on the news as a far-off headline in China. I remember reading stories here and there and being curious enough to do some basic web searches to find out why it was so devastating in the Far East, but it wasn't in the US yet, so there weren't tons of stories published in the States. Americans have great apathy for things until they face them directly. A mere month after reading those news blips live on TV, the coronavirus is rampant. I'd argue every one of us is being hit in some form. The schools are closed and executive orders are in place for people to stay at home, and no group bigger than 10 people can meet. The newsroom has been a ghost town, and most of you who work are working from home. I'm going to skip over to page 321 if you're following along. Wes and I are both working at home now, both of us trying to homeschool Parker through what's left of 3rd grade and entertain Hutch all day because his daycare is closed. We are just two of the millions of parents in America adjusting to new schedules and new balls to juggle. The coronavirus could not have been predicted. An illness starting in one small village, traveling through the world, killing hundreds of thousands of people along the way is a concept you'd think would be a plot for a novel, not real life. Only it is real. It's as real gets. People around us are dying, and we're all forced to live in these unexpected, difficult, altered times, unsure of what's next. It made me question whether I should continue with publishing this book in this uncertain moment. Is now really the right time? Yes, that's where I landed after much thought. Now is the exact right time. Ultimately, the coronavirus will pass. A vaccine will be found and social distancing will stop being mandated. Life will move on for all of us, including my kids. Tic-Tac will arrive and Parker and Hutch will continue to grow. The almost 3 years you just read about are already lived. Recording them won't change the future. But the more important reason I believe it's okay to put this book out now is about an overwhelming sense of togetherness. This pandemic that we wish wasn't happening is surprisingly bringing people together. We are being quarantined in our own homes and looking out for each other by trying to keep apart. The coronavirus isn't just affecting one race or age group or geographical region. Everyone is going through some version of the same thing. It's no mistake the hashtag trending nationally every day reads hashtag alone together. That is how you guys make me feel when I write about real life and raising kids. Your comments indicate you sometimes agree with something I did and other times wholly disagree. Either way, there's comfort in reading your words. You provide a relatability between our lives. Maybe in some small way, reading the stories and comments in this book can act as a reminder we all have similarities as we juggle different details. As for what's next, I don't know. None of us do. We can only hope we'll just add whatever might be thrown our way to the balls already up in the air and keep managing the best we can. So I guess school had actually stopped there when I wrote that. I just still look at that and I reread that. I reread that right now to you, thinking the whole time, I can't believe we had no idea what was coming. Imagine what you would have thought if you knew last March or April how long it would go. And it's almost good we kind of didn't have a future fortune teller ball, right? I mean, it's like you just got to go day at a time. And I don't mean that. I say that as like an optimistic thing because that's supposed to be optimistic. We're in it together. But it is nice. I think that we didn't know we'd still be sitting here January 2021. The vaccine, though, does bring some hope. So that's good. That does seem to be good. I wanted to finally read, before we go, one final excerpt. So from actually the first book, because it's really funny, I think. It's one of the funniest stories that I've actually lived, and I liked writing about it, and hopefully it'll leave us all laughing and entertained. But before we do that, any other questions? And I'm kind of going through the chats. I really like it. But ask away if you guys want to ask anything. Just don't want you to think I'm not asking. Oh, there goes an email.
Just another comment. I really like how in your forward there, or at the end, I guess, you were saying that it brought people together, because people in a family with their children, I mean, goodness, I don't have kids, so I can't imagine how much trouble it must be in work to homeschool. Oh my goodness. But I bet y'all know each other so much better. I would
And
think,
that's my time in, for better or worse, we know each other so much better.
yes. And they'll always remember the year they spent together with the coronavirus. And they were right there. There was dad, there was mom, right there in the home. You know, I would think that's kind of nice.
It's not just kids though, you know, and that's why I kind of mean we're all juggling different details, but we're all in it together, whether you have kids or whether you work, it doesn't really matter. It's not just about me. I truly don't think it's about me. All the comments I put in here from Facebook posts are because it's a community-wide effort of what we all sort of relate to based on the stories that I'm sharing, but it's all different people's opinions. But I think we know our spouses better. I mean, you feel like you know someone, you live with them, you're there in a household with somebody, right? And I had someone say, and it was a guy, of course, because he was, you know, being the guy, but he was like, a good friend of mine, he was like, wow, you really get to know somebody when you're in quarantine with them. I was like, I know, you have 4 kids, you've been married to her for 20 years. I hope you already knew her that well. But it's just, you know, you really do. This is, and I don't know about you guys, what you're doing. We've done jigsaw puzzles. You know, we've done like playing Uno, attack as a family all the time, card games. there haven't been able to be all these events that we had every weekend and planning schedules, and for everybody, your calendars too, suddenly your calendar's free. So it's like, what are we gonna do? Another business that's been booming, Netflix, streaming line videos, all the TV channels, you know, if you had your show wrapped up and ready to launch, man, you were really lucky because you suddenly had a lot more eyes. That's how the Tiger King got popular. That would have never done anything had it not been COVID. The other thing I wanted to, and please do ask questions if you guys have them, and I'm so happy to be here. So I want to make sure we're talking and I'm talking about what you guys want to talk about. But I do want to, because it is kind of about the books, is read one more excerpt. And I just sort of decided to read this one as we were talking, because I think I want to end upbeat and laughing so we can all go into the evening feeling like it was a worthwhile social event that we were able to smile with some friends. I did write these books based when I was on maternity leave with Hutch, the second child. And I really missed myself. And I put out on Facebook on the first week of maternity leave, he was 6 days old, and I wrote, shower today, small victory. And it turned into, and I had no idea at the time. And then the next week I wrote something else. And the third week I wrote something else. And the fourth week, and it turned into week 1 up until I started doing monthly when I went back to work, month 30. And that's this book. And then this is month 31 to month 65. So it goes in order, although you could just read the Juggle Is Real. You don't have to read this one. But one of the funniest stories, and they're just real life tales, and then the response from people, how we're all kind of in it together. And I have all different kinds of people and ages read it. I've had some of my friends' kids read them, girls read them in junior high. And I've had single men write me and say they love the books because it shows them a part of life they'd never relate to, right? Like stories they'd never know otherwise, which I find really flattering. I appreciate that they're taking the time to read. And they're short and easy to read because no parent actually going through this has time to read anything else. But with that said, I do like this story. And when I think back to the fact this happened, it is remarkable. If you happen to have small victories, I'm going to start on page 182. But the setup for this is that it was Christmas. Hutch was 14 months old and Parker was 4.5. As I said, Wes's parents, my in-laws, are in Louisville. So he had work or something and had to drive there. And so he basically had to drive home before Christmas time. And I had to fly with the 2 kids alone from Louisville to Charlotte. So here we are. Okay, page 182. Because good planning has us at Louisville International early, I don't mind the frustrations of only one security check line being open, despite 200 people trying to get through. I remain calm over the extra holdup when my over-the-counter cough medicine, non-liquid, sets off all kinds of alarms. And the fact that I have laryngitis and can't talk in more than a whisper doesn't bug me. Instead, it becomes a game for Parker. Anything I whisper, she simply repeats out loud on my behalf. In fact, everyone gets a cute laugh when we finally head out of security and she says, "Thank you, TSA. Mommy says Merry Christmas." We stop at Starbucks and end up at gate A5, exactly 30 minutes before departure time. About 20 people are waiting as well. There's no sign saying Charlotte or an agent at the desk, but I whisper a question to someone sitting there. Parker asks them out loud and they confirm they're on the same flight. 10 minutes later, common sense kicks in and Parker helps me ask an airline employee if there's a gate change. There is. We're now gate A19. The flight is boarding. Parker yells the update to the 20 people around us and they all take off running. It is then that Parker has to go potty. We spend 3 minutes in a toilet stall. She sings while sitting there, completely unbothered. Hutch tries to crawl out underneath the door. I'm counting seconds. Turns out it's a false alarm. There's no pee. Seriously? We book it to A19. It is probably good I can't talk because anything I'd say like, why wouldn't you put up a damn sign about a gate change, wouldn't have been friendly. I am stressed, but we board. We get seated. We even have a few minutes to spare. It's one of those flights where everyone is quietly settling in, shutting their eyes to relax on a short early morning trip. It's still dark outside. Right at this moment, when I'm starting to go back to calm, Hutch decides it's time to play. He's in my lap and I'm holding his sippy cup of milk and Parker's Starbucks hot chocolate, so I can't do much. Parker starts shoving pieces of her messy double chocolate muffin into his mouth, creating a flurried brown-looking disaster across our seats. It keeps him from talking. I love her instinct. I whisper to keep it going. Soon we're out of muffin. The sippy cup is empty and we're in line to take off. He lets out a good scream. People look at us. He lets out another, squiggling to get out of my lap. We are the people you hope you're not near. He won't stop shrieking because I won't let him down. As this tornado swirls around me, I become acutely aware I'm that mom. Dear God, I'm the mom I hate. The mom I used to roll my eyes over at her lack of controllable children. But a tornado is a tornado and you have to react fast. So instantly after that thought, I wrestle a Ziploc bag of goldfish out of the bag under my seat. He generally likes to shake it around like a rattle to watch food make noise. For 30 glorious seconds, Hutch is happy, shaking and shaking and shaking that bag. We are now first in line for takeoff. All of a sudden, yes, this hurts to type even 36 hours later, 300 goldfish go flying. The Ziploc bag must not have been fully sealed. I see orange crackers land on people seated around us. My internal thoughts come out in a whisper. Parker hears them. She yells, "Shit! Mommy says she wants to die!" Every head swivels. I can't actually speak, so I raise my hand. I have no idea why. I suppose I'm acknowledging being alive. I whisper to her I didn't really mean it as I see people across the aisle pick goldfish out of their hair. As a minuscule silver lining, Hutch is quiet as he shoves fistfuls of goldfish in his mouth from the now easily accessible buffet in our laps. And the plane starts to take off, so Parker gets distracted by the speed and pretty sunrise colors in the clouds out the window. Once the plane is level, I plop Hutch in Parker's lap, take off my seatbelt, and begin picking up 300 goldfish. I don't want to say sorry because I can't really talk. Finally, I give up. I grab the last fish I can and free Hutch to walk up and down the aisle. Probably not the safest decision, but there's no turbulence. And at some point, you just do what you have to do. He starts making friends in the way 14-month-olds demand attention when they toddle by. He also decides to take a power nap right there in the aisle. I let him. There's a picture here if you get to it. But here's the thing I notice through this agonizingly long 45 minutes. No one is complaining, at least not to me. No one's making me feel like they hate my kids. I guess they probably do, and if I didn't know them and love them endlessly, I would today too. But no one is letting me know. No one seems to care if Hutch is walking into their space, smiling goofily and yelling some unintelligible word as they try to sleep. Not one of the 3 passengers who had to step over him napping as they made their way to the lavatory caught my eye or said a word about the obstacle in the aisle. Maybe the highest standard of humanity happened to be booked on that flight. Maybe there was extra empathy because Hutch had on a Keekly jersey and it was a plane full of Panthers fans. Maybe the holiday spirit created extra tolerance. Or maybe they just knew they'd been there. So that was Small Victories. And this is the Juggle Is Real. And I'm so sorry if I saw some people like kind of cringe when one of those words came out of my mouth. I'm so sorry. If kids were around, I should have thought about that. I was just thinking it was a ladies group. So I'm really sorry if that upset anyone. But that's what I yelled. That's what I said. And that's what she yelled. And that was the truth of the matter. So things happen, right? That's how it works. Let me share with you guys, and it's 7:45, and I'm going to go ahead and put this screen up with my contact info, just so we don't forget to do that before people hop off. And then please, if you have other questions, I want you to feel free to ask. Let me make sure though I know how the heck to share my screen. If you want to ask a question, I'm going to go ahead and say, well, that didn't work. I'm going to go ahead and ask that you just unmute yourself and ask it that way. I think that's easier. Well, I don't know how to do it. Let me tell you where to get the books. Let me try that. Oh, wait, here we go. Scripts are coming in for tonight. Contact me. I did make a whole thing. I apologize for this.
Molly, we can send it out to everybody if
Please
you
do that. I'd appreciate that.
We can do that.
I'm just I get used to being on Zooms all day and Microsoft Teams, but I never really run them. Okay, there. Can you guys see all that? Okay, great. So the books, please get them if you want them. They're great They're great gifts, and I just like signing them for people. I want to sort of share the theme that we're all in this together. They're great gifts, I think, even for girlfriends and Valentine's Day and all that fun, you know, grandparents, aunts, sister-in-laws, daughters, whoever. But I can sign them. My point in that is that because we can't have book signings anymore, I've appreciated doing this during the holidays, is that if you order it through mollygrantham.com, just email me afterwards or Facebook message me if you want me to sign it, personalize it to someone. And some people have sent me really nice emails about, you know, their mothers or their daughters or a friend down the street about something they've done, you know, or working in healthcare, or and I can just tell me about them and I can write a whole letter to them in the front. I'd love to do that. There's obviously no charge for that. I just want to do that. So feel free to order them through mollygrantham.com and do that. And they're also at Park Road Books or Amazon, but I like to promote the mom and pop shops and not Amazon. So Amazon doesn't have them any cheaper than anywhere else. They're not allowed to. I had to jump through hoops to make sure they couldn't undercut the mom and pop shops. So there's my Facebook and my Instagram, my email, molly.grantham@wbtv.com. I absolutely invite you guys to please contact me with anything, story ideas, or just follow along. A lot of good stories out there on Facebook. I try to keep things really upbeat and positive. I always say the good, the bad, and the always real. What other questions do you guys have? Now I'm seeing faces. Denise, Joyce, Michelle. I saw Angel on here. Charlene, Adrian, Ellen, Jeanette, Janet, Donna, Neil. Hey, Neil, Krista. There's Angel. Oh, Angel, you just put are you driving, Angel? Are you illegal? You better not be breaking the law. You are driving. Put your video back off. Stop looking at the phone.
Thank you, Molly.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you tonight. See you tonight at 11. Walk out of this edit bay and grab some food somewhere, have some granola bars, and head out to talk about the vaccine.
Molly, it was amazing. It was just, you're so real and so personable. We all feel like we know you.
I feel like I know you guys. And in fact, some of the names on here I recognize from Facebook, but I've never seen. So that's really fun for me. I truly feel like it's a social event. And Carolina Breast Friends, you guys have done a great job at creating this. You really have.
Molly, I would like to thank you on behalf of everyone for all the support you've given the breast cancer survivors here. We've seen you at all the events, and things like this, and your spirit brings a lot to the cause.
Thank you, Adrian. That makes me feel really good. I did actually, I meant to mention this, and I'm glad you said that. It's not a sad thing, but I do, this book ended, I don't know how to say this in the way that doesn't sound sad, but I don't mean it as a sad way. I mean it as like an endorsement for my mom. So my mom died in 2017 of breast cancer. Many of you know that. It was metastatic breast cancer. It was the second time she had it. And I was in the hospice house with her. And one of the final conversations we had was I told her I wanted to write a book. And she said, you should do it, honey. You should write the book. And so I talk about that a little bit in the afterword of the first one, because her endorsement was what made me feel like I could do it. And I was editing it while she was in a position where she could no longer speak in the hospice house. But I was there and holding her hand and with her, and I felt like she was part of it. And it was really a push to make me feel like I know she'd be proud of me. And I dedicated this one to her. And this one begins, remember, it's kind of like that serial memoir, month 30, and then this was month 31. And month 31 begins in seeing my mom's death through my kids' eyes. And I think that circle of life, we're all not really sure what to show kids and how much they should see. And I've come to the conclusion it's a very much personal decision. There's no right or wrong ever, right? But some people think if I don't give them a chance to say goodbye, does that shortchange them and they'll be mad at me later? Or does some think I want them to see it all? And so it was, my kids were 2 and 5.5 at the time, or 2 and 6 at the time. So what do you show them? And it was just really, I wrote it in a raw way because that was the realness of it. And that was the authenticity of it. And I feel comfortable telling you guys from Carolina Breast Friends and so many of you survivors on here. There's Mary. I see Mary DeWalt now. In telling you that that's really how it begins. I mean, it's a funny, hopefully funny book you guys can laugh with, but there's a lot of honesty in it too, and just real life.